Hello there, and welcome to the weekly Outside Views magazine on German politics. Right wing extremists were apparently planning a violent overthrow in Germany. The Attorney General announced further searches for this. And they are said to have planned a coup and, in some cases, also trained with weapons. The Federal Prosecutor's Office had 25 people from the so called Reich citizen scene arrested. Around 3,000 police officers were on duty in 11 federal states as well as in Austria and Italy on Wednesday morning, said a spokesman for the Federal Prosecutor's Office. Last week, not this Wednesday, but this is so important I had to bring it. The terrorist organization wanted to overthrow the state system in Germany and replace it with its own, the basics of which had already been worked out. They would have accepted deaths for that. 19 of the 25 suspects arrested on Wednesday are now in custody. In addition, there are 27 other suspects, said a police spokeswoman. We don't have a name for this association yet. That's what she said, but they will find out, I guess, if there was one. The president of the Federal Criminal Police Office, Holger Münch, assumes that after the major raid on a group of Reich citizens, the number of suspects will increase. Münch spoke on the day on the public television Heute Journal after the 25 arrests of 54 suspects and another 150 searches. It's likely that other suspects will be found and further searches will be carried out in the near future. Federal Interior Minister Nancy Faeser spoke of an abyss of terrorist threat. According to the current status of the investigation, the alleged terrorist organization uncovered was driven by violent fantasies of revolution and conspiracy ideology, said the minister. And Justice Minister Marco Buschmann wrote on Twitter, "Democracy is defensive. A major anti-terrorist operation has been taking place since this morning. There is a suspicion that an armed attack on constitutional bodies was planned." And according to the police, 22 of those arrested are said to be members of a terrorist organization, 2 of them ringleaders. As the Attorney General Peter Frank announced in a press conference, Heinrich XIII is one of the main suspects. He's Prince Royce, and he was already classified as a threat. The entrepreneur from Hesse, who is said to own a hunting lodge in eastern Thuringia, and a former paratrooper commander are suspected of having been the ringleaders of the alleged terrorist group. That's what the German magazine Spiegel and the German newspaper Süddeutsche Zeitung also reported. The federal prosecutor said the prince was already in custody along with 7 other suspects. And the former AfD member of the Bundestag and today's Berlin judge Birgit Malzack-Winkemann is said to be among those arrested. As a former member of parliament, she has local knowledge in the Bundestag, and as a sports shooter, she is said to have several firearms, as the Spiegel further reports. The Attorney General did not name Malzack-Winkemann in a statement on that day, but said a former member of the Bundestag had been arrested, but it's now already confirmed. According to the information from the German press agency, the house and the office of a KSK soldier were also searched. The active soldier is a member of the Special Forces Command, but he's not a command soldier, according to the report. The background is that parts of the logistics, support staff, and the management of the association are also stationed in the barracks in Calw in Baden-Württemberg. The non-commissioned officer had already attracted attention in the Bundeswehr as an opponent of vaccination and was later reported from the troops. Attorney General Frank only said that individual members of the terrorist organization had been active in the Bundeswehr in the past. 3 other arrested are considered supporters. Among them is a Russian who Henry XIII Prince Royce is said to have helped to contact representatives of the Russian Federation. According to the statement by the Attorney General, however, there is no evidence that the contact persons responded positively to the prince's request. The group should gather around Henry XIII by the end of November 2021 at the latest. As the federal public prosecutor Frank announced, the members followed a conglomerate of conspiracy myths, including narratives from the Reich citizen scene, the Reichsbürger, and the QAnon ideology. And you know this from the United States. The members are firmly convinced that Germany is currently being governed by members of a so-called deep state, according to a statement by the federal prosecutor. The term deep state is used in conspiracy myths. Behind it hides the idea that secret powers are pulling the strings behind political decisions. According to the federal prosecutor's office, the group expected an alliance to free them. The members understood it to be a technically superior secret society of governments, military, and intelligence services from various countries, including Russia and the United States. The association had firmly assumed that their attack was imminent. And according to the Attorney General, the group saw it as its task to find remaining institutions and state representatives and to secure the power of the new order. The military arm of the movement was supposed to ensure a system change at all levels. That means eliminate the elements of the rule of law in communities, districts, and municipalities. So in the end, I would have been a target too. The association accepts that deaths will occur, it said. The group also had plans for the period after the takeover. A transitional government, possibly military, was to be formed to negotiate the new state order with the allied victorious powers of the Second World War. The group saw Russia as the main point of contact. The federal prosecutor said the association should be divided into different departments, like a cabinet of a state. The group has set itself the goal of eliminating the existing state order, the free democratic basic order, using violence and military means. It was also part of the plan to forcefully invade the German Bundestag. After the arrests of Reich citizens, the AfD faction moves into the focus of politics. The security of the Bundestag is to be checked as well. According to media reports, after the raid on so-called Reich citizens because of plans to overthrow, members of the Bundestag are calling for a review of the role of the right-wing AfD and the security of the Bundestag. Even in this network, there's apparently a connection to the AfD parliamentary group, said Bundestag Vice President Katrin Göring-Eckardt from the Greens to the newspapers of the Funke Media Group, according to a report. It will be checked for the Bundestag which security precautions need to be adjusted. Following the arrest of a former AfD member of the Bundestag who wanted to storm the Bundestag, her existing contacts in parliament urgently need to be checked, also said Social Democrat interior expert Sebastian Hartmann, according to the newspaper report. I assume that she was hoping for help from within her plans for a coup. During nationwide searches, as I said, 25 people were arrested as members or supporters of a suspected terrorist organization. And they are said, as I said, to have planned a political overthrow and an armed attack on the Bundestag. And according to a preliminary report by the media of the editorial network Germany, the Green politician Konstantin von Notz is also calling for more protection for the Bundestag. The Bundestag security concept is not designed to allow enemies of the Constitution to be elected to Parliament with privileged access. This is a weak point in a well-fortified democracy, said von Notz, who is also chairman of the Parliamentary Control Committee. The protection for the Bundestag must be increased without sabotaging the everyday lives of democratic MPs. And according to the report by the editorial network Germany, the Social Democrat member of the Bundestag, Ralf Stegner, said that anyone who is involved in an extremist party should not have free access to the Bundestag as a former member of parliament. The Bundestag must protect itself against enemies of democracy with its domiciliary rights. Oh, what a word. We must be squeamish about that, said Stegner, and the rights of MPs and former MPs of democratic parties should not be restricted. On the other hand, he does see a need for more checks when it comes to visitors from members of parliament. After the blockade actions by climate activists, Brandenburg's Interior Minister Michael Stübgen spoke out in favor of examining the suspicion of founding a criminal organization in the investigations against organizations such as the Last Generation. From my point of view, there's a lot to be said for it. That's what Stübgen told the German press agency on Friday after the Conference of Interior Ministers in Munich. They are organized, have the appropriate training facilities, and arrange to take criminal action, he said. First of all, the Federal Ministry of the Interior will present a status report on the actions of climate activists at the beginning of next year, said the minister. In this context, it must also be examined whether paragraph 316b of the Criminal Code, which sanctions the disruption of public services, needs to be tightened with regard to the actions of climate activists. So far, there has only been talk of damage or destruction of critical infrastructure. When climate activists get stuck in such a company, they don't destroy anything, but the effect is initially the same, said the minister. However, so far, they only could be prosecuted for trespassing. In view of the threat posed by such acts, this is not sufficient, emphasized Stübgen. Defense Minister Christine Lambrecht cannot hope for further financial injections given the sluggish start to fully equipping the Bundeswehr. In a reply to a letter from the SPD politician, the Department of Finance Minister Christian Lindner from the Liberals points out that against the background of an increased defense budget and the 100 billion special fund, there is no lack of money, but that the Ministry of Defense must now do its job. The letter was available to the dpa news agency in Berlin. According to the letter from Finance State Secretary Steffen Säbisch to his colleague in the Defense Ministry, the State Secretary Benedikt Zimmer, there was obviously a different perception of the top-level talks with the armaments industry on Monday. The industry representatives there expressly pointed out that, in their opinion, the sluggish availability of equipment and ammunition was not due to a lack of budgetary funds, but to complicated, sometimes non-transparent and inconsistent requirements planning and bureaucratic ordering processes in the ministry. According to the German magazine Spiegel, Lambrecht had written to the Minister of Finance that in order to replenish the ammunition depots, it was necessary to immediately provide significant budget funds and declarations of commitment. Lindner should quickly provide more money. And according to Lambrecht, at a top-level meeting in the Chancellery, industry representatives have offered to be able to deliver significant quantities of urgently needed ammunition ad hoc, or at least to be able to produce them in the short to medium term. These announcements must be exploited immediately in favor of the Bundeswehr, she wrote. According to Lindner's department, the common concern to strengthen the Bundeswehr has been taken into account with growing defense budgets and the special fund. As you know, the Ministry of Defense has every opportunity to use the funds accordingly in the course of its own technical prioritization as a specialist department. However, I have to state that you did not realize the need for ammunition procurement mentioned here, neither during the negotiations for the special fund and its economic plan, nor in the expressed course of the parliamentary procedure. After the top-level meeting, the budget holders of the federal government also pointed out to the Ministry of Defense that the procurement has so far been piecemeal. After all, the armaments industry cited there as an example that there were regular attempts during the year to buy ammunition from existing expenditure residues, but that the companies could not fulfill these orders in the short term. This was also not contradicted extensively, but it was agreed on the sidelines of the conversation that the Ministry of Finance was ready to provide support. This would also include support in improving your planning process, they say. And that was a kind of a right hook from the ministry, because the planning process in the Ministry of Defense is really what is really down. Lambrecht is the worst defense minister I've seen, and I've seen a lot of them. And I'll see you in my next video. I'll be back.